original deadline was when we were hoping it was back in December.
Is there,
So because we're not exhausted out there, we keep going, to the next one. And that day is, the budget and finance meeting, so that day will be the same day, review it to make sure everything's input, have them ready, hopefully by the 4th.
in the case that, we didn't have a deadline, what would be the, what's the problem with not having a deadline?
Would that be better to go,
To encourage
yeah,
people
the
to,
budget and finance.
because otherwise it would be
No,
just be first come,
yeah.
first served.
It's to open it up to everybody, but sometimes what has happened in the past is that organizations come to the NC at different times of the fiscal year, and the NC gives out money to organizations, and then you have other organizations come, and there's no more money because it all has been given out. So this is more setting a deadline, so all those who are interested, even if they need the money, like the Lotus Festival, their event is not until June, they already submitted an application. So they're already making sure that even though that their event is in June, that there will be funds if the board votes to give funding to them. So it's just so that everybody knows, hey, there's money that the NC has. We would like everybody to, who is interested in some kind of project or something, apply for it. That way the board knows what organizations, what are the projects, and we can prioritize as a board how much to give to what organizations. What would be best?
Nick?
So I have a question. So I'm just a bit confused for the deadline. Why aren't we distributing equally the funds to each committee or to each area, and then when projects come, they can be funded by that? I'm just confused on why I'm a little, if you guys could clarify on the deadline, because so after the deadline, are they still able to apply?
So the thinking behind this deadline is, let's say we only have a handful of applications, that doesn't mean we're gonna give all the money that we have to those organizations. We'll have another window and let the school know, let the organizations know, do you have a project that you would like to apply for grant for? This is the application submitted by a such date, and then that way the board can vote on how much the amount and what organization is. And in the past, there's some committees that have more requests than other committees, education, for example. That would be one of them, sports and rec. Those would be committees that would give out some money for other committees. Some committees would just spend their money because they have money, and not really with the guided focus of project. So,
That was one of the reasons why we said that the budget, everybody would just put it all in one, and then from there you request to the general board instead of each committee.
We voted on the budget, and instead of allocating a certain amount of funds to each committee, it was all put into the MPG.
and then we did have money set aside for outreach, so I think even like for Kite Festival,
Yeah,
there's some money.
and that would go through committees, right?
That's what that was.
Just for outreach, yeah, because that's the one.
So potentially, a few committees could take up all funding, and there would be none left for the rest of them, or?
No, 5,000 was allocated to outreach.
5,000.
Okay, but for,
So then, for the Kite Festival, we want to use some of that money for outreach, then you bring it up to the general board, what amount might be needed. So then our committees, when the budget was approved, it was, made aware that that money was there. But
Yeah, because
now
the
it's
former
not
board
the
was just, they had been given an amount, they were just using it at their discretion, and then the receipts not being turned in, and it just was not looking too grayish, So we're trying to be more transparent, so everyone knows and comes to this general board when they need something. Even outreach that has 5,000 allocated to their committee, they still have to come to the general board.
But because we're still in process of effort, we won't have any.
Cynthia?
I
Sorry.
recall that we had taken a flyer and we voted on that flyer so that we could send it to schools and all these organizations. When will that be done again so that they can meet that deadline? If there's,
It's all about, Michelle?
I mean, we would have to
well, with
post
all the
on,
holidays and everything, everybody's pretty much,
Yeah.
lost the
So-
money.
yeah,
and
so
So
we
it's
have
our
to-
job as board members to let decide to extend it, it's our job to let all those organizations and contacts that we have, to let them know you can still submit your application.
We'll have Capricia put something up on the website advertising that, it's reopened to submit more applications. And we've been getting emails and we've been letting them know, what we're gonna do. That we're not out of exhaustive efforts, we're looking to extend the deadline, so to keep an eye out and once it's reopened to put in their applications. But we'll definitely get it up on the web and all of our outreach.
Well, I'm looking at the deadline as well, and I don't see why we should have a deadline. I know we spoke of seasonal, that we would do so much this season, so much that season, and that was not discussed again, so. As far as she was mentioning, Michelle, I'm sorry, was the budget and finance was gonna meet that day, so that they would find out how many applications came through, how many that, would be coming between now and then, and we would have more information, so.
I think part of the reason is we don't want to necessarily close off the fall applications that were already submitted and say that session is closed and force people to resubmit when people have already gone through the process of submitting the information and coming to a budget and finance meeting and presenting why they should have these different grants provided to them. So I believe that we should continue the process, keeping it seasonal, because it sets up, it puts in place this artificial deadline, which makes people say, okay, well, I'm gonna make sure that I have all of my stuff together so the committee can fully evaluate it. But to not extend this and to sort of close it off is unfair to those who have already put in the work. And it's of no fault of theirs that we're on exhaustive efforts.
Right. Nick?
Can't we just not have a deadline and not close off the fall applications?
I mean, that's up to you guys as a board, but right now the amendment, the motion reads as such, if that's what you're leaning towards as a board, then somebody needs to amend the amendment.
Or you would vote no,
If I can clarify too, the board had already set a deadline before.
Yeah, so if we vote no, then that original deadline
We
remains.
go back on our own word.
Cecilia?
So we don't open it up to others.
So how would the seasonal, sort of function like?
Well, it's already been put in place. Do you have a copy of those old documents that you presented and have the different lists of the different deadlines? Because
We didn't have any other deadlines established. What we were gonna do is, after November, depending on how many applications we received, because we had no idea how many were gonna come in, we would vote on those, and then depending on what funds were left over, then we would reopen it. And then after that second period, if there's more money, then we would reopen it.
So we wanted to place routines so that all the organizations and groups know, about these, there will be an annual,
Yeah.
you know,
So next year they know, hey, I gotta get mine in by November, or whatever,
So what happens if they submit one, like, they didn't know about our neighborhood council, and then they found out in December, are they not able to submit one in December?
Are you talking hypothetically or actual now?
Hypothetically.
There was still funds, wouldn't they'd be
we'll
still,
have another
they
one.
have to wait like to the
Right,
next
so
one.
we reopened. So if it had been closed in November and we took a vote on a number of applications and we gave out money, but we still had $6,000 left over, then we'd reopen it. So it might not be December because we might have heard all those applications in December, so come January, we would reopen it, advertise it, then they could submit again. Tasha?
Okay, so, I have a question, then I have a comment. So, you're saying that it'd be limited to $5,000 like per season to make, is that what you're saying? So we put, or there
There
is
was
no
no
limit. So there is a possibility that at one point there could just be no money after.
I mean, say if in November we got 20 applications and we approved them all and that was all the money, then yeah.
Okay, and the comment that I was gonna make is if we might potentially want to get rid of the deadline simply because we've been on exhaustive efforts and making a deadline in January at the end of this month, I mean, just considering everything that's happened, and also considering the amount of effort we've put in to try to get done to take us off of exhaustive efforts and we're still there, Maybe it would be best for us to not have a deadline, because if not, we're gonna continue amending this motion from February, March, April, until we actually do get off of exhaustive efforts. So I think it actually might be better if we don't do a deadline until we figure out the whole situation with the done.
Are you making a motion to amend the amended motion?
So, but the comment that you just made is if we were to vote this down, right, that the old deadline would still stand.
Right, because we
So,
voted for that.
would my amendment need to be then for there to just be no deadline? Is that, okay. All right, so I'd like to make an amendment to the motion so that the LA 32 Neighborhood Council has no deadline for NPG applications. Until we,
It was seconded by Nick?
until we further figure out the situation with done and exhaustive efforts.
So who seconded?
Nick seconded. Do we have any public comment on amending this motion? On the amendment?
Thank you, everybody. I'm going to be extremely brief. Basically, what you guys realize or notice or observing now is that there is no consequences, there's no punishment, and there's no repercussions, whether there's a deadline or not. So vote on removing the deadline, and that way the motion should be supported. Thank you, guys.
Thank you. Anybody else? Board? Hannah? Okay, so we're voting on amending the motion now. To amend the motion to read that the LA 32 Neighborhood Council has no deadline for MPG applications.
I think maybe add on to that until further notice from, because once we hear back from like done and everything.
Pending.
Pending
Pending
exhaustive
exhaustive
efforts, like update from done.
So that the LA 32 Neighborhood Council has no deadline for MPG applications pending,
Exhausted efforts?
From done,
Pending
yeah.
removal.
pending removal or update?
Yeah, pending removal would be the correct word, pending removal of exhaustive efforts from done.
Okay, so let's take a vote on amending the motion to read that the LA 32 Neighborhood Council has no deadline for MPG applications pending removal of exhaustive efforts from done.
No, I have.
No. All in favor? Raise your hand.
8 yes, all those opposed? Abstain? Twelve.
8-4-2, 8-4-1.
3.
8-3-1. Motion passes. Okay, so now we need to vote on the actual amended motion, which is now that the LA 32 Neighborhood Council has no deadline for MPG applications pending removal of exhaustive efforts from done. Is there any public comment on this? Board comment? Let's go ahead and vote. All in favor of the motion?
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 yes. All those opposed? 3 abstentions. 1 motion passes.
8-3-1, motion passes.
The 13, that's on the clock.
Um,
Tricia, are you
voting?
for or against the motion?
Who, me?
Are you
She
trying
was
to chair?
against.
I was against it both times.
13 until.
You said 3 no's, but you only, were you a no?
Yeah, I was a no both times.
I counted everybody.
Then there's 4 no's. It's Capricia, Yoli, you, and Michelle voted no.
8-4-1.
8-3.
No, 8-4-1.
No. Patricia voted no. I voted no. Michelle voted
And Yoli?
no. No, she voted yes.
You voted in favor? Oh,
It's 9 years.
9 yes.
then it's 9 yeses. Nine, 3-1, motion passes.
Thank you.
Thank you, Cynthia. Okay,
Oh, the secretary.
now we like. Item 8, discussion and possible action. The motion is that LA 32 Neighborhood Council send a letter to Councilman Weezer to provide the Neighborhood Council with his office surveillance policies, reporting process, camera locations, and if any signs have been posted to notify the public within LA 32 of the surveillance cameras. This motion was approved and provided to us by the Public Safety Committee at their November meeting. Angela, do you want to speak on that?
Actually, yeah,
Or, I'm sorry, Victor was, right? I'm sorry, Victor?
This, actually, this came to our attention, at one of our meetings that, some couple of community members had concerns with some, cameras, outside their locations, and, a couple of months ago, the council's office came out with a e-blast notifying the community that he had allocated $250,000 for certain, allocations for certain, services here. And one of the services was the installation of surveillance cameras in the community.